So I recently found this video that talks about whether working remotely can hurt your career or not. What I find interesting about this video is that it was posted 5 years ago. So before COVID-19 and before working remotely became a thing. So let's watch it together, see if we agree with this video or not, and whether working remotely is definitely dangerous to our career growth.
Working remotely is great and all, but it can be a career killer. I'm sorry, but it can. And you can at me if you want.
I like the fact that she said it can be rather than saying it will definitely kill your career. And I agree with that. I'm not a big fan of working remotely as a full-time working style.
Over the decades, I've worked in the office and I've worked from home. I've managed people 3 cubicles over and 3 time zones away.
Okay, good. She did both. So the person who's speaking about it, Suzy in this case, has tried both approaches, and so she's speaking from experience. That's good to know. I dislike people imposing their opinion or sharing their opinion about something that they have not experienced.
I understand that as an employee, sometimes remote work is the only way work is possible. And I understand as a boss that sometimes remote work is the only way to get the person you need. So
she mentions 2 points. It's the only way you might be able to work, and it's the only way you might get that person that you want. And that's definitely the case. I've seen people where they are going through a situation where the only way they can work is working remotely. Now, it's very hard to demand for that in an organization that isn't implementing full-time working from home. But I think if you are in a place where you can bargain for that, you have leverage because you are a person of demand, you have great skills, people want you, then of course, given your situation, you can demand for it. Again, given whether your organization has that option or not. On the other hand, it's the only way you can get that person that you need. This is interesting because apparently the new Starbucks CEO is working remotely. He has a jet that flies him to the headquarters every time he goes there. Aside from that, he works remotely. And that's becoming quite a thing because recently many organizations have a return to office policy, but they allow their CEOs to work fully remotely, or at least a lot of the time. And again, I think it goes back to whether does your company have that policy? Does it have a hybrid option? And do you have leverage? Are you demanded by multiple companies where you can use that leverage to demand working from home if you need it, or if it's your preferred style as well?
Here's the truth. The best work in an organization, the important work, it never gets done on the phone or over email or on Slack.
So the most important work doesn't get done remotely? I tend to believe that's almost always the case. When I think about inventions and big achievements like creating the iPhone and working on a new operating system like Microsoft's Windows, I don't think that kind of work can be pushed in a very strict deadline in a short time duration by having a team that is spread across the globe working remotely, especially if we're talking only about individuals and not teams working remotely, which is the case that we're seeing right now, right? The most important work and the biggest achievements are usually done by a very strong bonded team who are highly skilled, who love working together, and who share many ideas in a very short amount of time. Because of that feedback, it helps them push this innovative product out. I tend to agree with that, and this is why I'm not a big fan of working remotely. At the same time, working remotely increases the difficulty and the obstacles to create strong bonds with your teammates. To get that bond working remotely, you might need to spend a lot of time compensating for the lack of physical interactions and seeing the other person in front of you by conducting maybe longer one-on-ones and multiple one-to-ones as well with your teammates, with your supervisor, or with your direct reports. So I think even building relationships is harder doing it remotely. Again, another reason why I'm not a big fan of working remotely.
Listen, it is almost always facilitated by relationships and understandings that only happen when people are together physically. The banter, the lunches, the late nights, the jokes, the asides, the shared ahas, that kind of connectivity, it builds layers of trust.
So she mentions the different types of interactions that bonds people together, and I agree with that, but my main thing is the feedback loop. When you're working on a very important project, it's important that feedback gets across from multiple teams and stakeholders quickly and as informative as it could be as well. And I think that we can do that more effectively in person rather than doing it remotely, especially when you're trying to convey a message that you can only do it in a considerate manner or sensitively because other people have worked so hard on something. You want to criticize the output, but in a way that is tactful, that might be accepted. And I think seeing the person in front of you, seeing their body language also conveys whether they're being aggressive or they're being very sincere, trying to share constructive criticism. I think it's harder to achieve that doing it remotely.
And trust is a career's rocket fuel. You can fly without it, but you can't soar.
As for trust, I think when people get promoted, they get promoted based on the potential that they have displayed for upper management or the bosses where they warranted that promotion, or at least they have gotten it. If I'm putting you in a position, I'm saying, hey, I trust you to do this job. I've seen multiple indicators where it tells me that I can put that trust in you and feeling confident about it. Now, of course, it doesn't always play out, and it can definitely play out differently doing it remotely. But I think establishing trust is also based on relationships, which can be done more effectively in person.
You can even get promoted. But if you want to be a leader, you need to be in the building. If you can, and if you want, that's the biggie. Being a leader is not for everyone. Totally legit. But if you do, then my message remains, as annoying or as unwelcome as it may be. Leadership is an inside job, and it starts in the room where trust happens.
I don't think leadership can only be done physically. Again, I think it can be done better physically. It can be done more effectively physically than doing it remotely. I think, especially that this video came out in 2019, there is a shift when it comes to this belief. Maybe I believe that we've seen many examples where this can be carried out effectively, but the matter of the fact is still building relationships is better done physically. I wouldn't imagine having a marriage or a good relationship with my friends or family doing it purely remotely, or doing it full-time remotely as well. And I think it goes back to the same thing with building a relationship with my boss, with my team, with my direct reports. If I can't have a good relationship remotely all the time with these people that I care about, if I do care about my job and the thing that I'm working on, then also building the relationships that helps me achieve these things at my workplace will also be done more effectively in the office, physically, face-to-face. This video doesn't mention a lot of upsides for working remotely, and I think it goes without saying. By now, a lot of people experience working remotely. Working remotely allows you to focus, right? If you have a lot of things that you need to go over, being in the office where you might tend to get distracted more easily because people can come in your office or hit you up at your cubicle, that doesn't tend to happen working remotely. At the same time, commute, right? Commute, if you have a certain situation at home that you need to be just around your family, around that situation, working remotely can definitely help out. Which is why I think maybe in the long run, a hybrid option might be better. I don't think it's reasonable to eradicate it or remove it completely. But then again, it really depends from one organization to another and the type of work that they're carrying out. So that's my opinion about this video and about working remotely. I think it's a hot topic. Many people believe one way or another strongly. Would love to know whether you agree. Is working remotely better for your career, or is working physically instead?